Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of CSM Practice, the podcast that gives you the best tactics and frameworks from the trenches. We bring in executives that actually are doing great things within their organization and teach you what is it that they're doing. Hopefully, we inspire you to do the same in your own organization. And today we're going to talk about how do we tie the voice of the customer program to getting a higher lifetime value? So if you're a big organization, you probably have a formal voice of the customer program. And sometimes there's a little bit of a silo between that and customer success. So how do we resolve for that? How do we run the voice of the customer program that actually results in a higher lifetime value? We're going to share all the secrets. And if you're a small organization and you don't have excellent engagement with your customer executives, or you do, but you don't feel like you're getting enough feedback and you're not closing the loop on things that they do tell you and it's not formal, I think you're going to get a lot of nuggets here on how you can take your relationship with executive sponsors of your existing accounts and take it to the next level. Ready to get started? I have Susana Esteban from Madrid. She's now in Silicon Valley for 6 months, and I snatched her. I met her at TSIA. She's a lovely, lovely person, super, super smart. And she's done her presentation at the same time as I delivered mine at the latest TSIA conference. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing topic. We got to bring her in. And she said yes. So, Susanna, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Irit. This is a privilege and a pleasure to be part of your podcast. Thank you very much.
Susana Esteban, global CX leader at Hewlett Packard Enterprise, HPE. Before we dive into like what is it that you've done, like at a high level, what would you say is the number one thing that anybody that's listening to this podcast is going to get out of this?
It is very important to establish this strong partnership between the customer experience, voice of the customer programs, and the customer success management function, because it reinforces each other in the manner that we need and we expect to support this maximize customer lifetime value common mission that we have. So this is, I would say, the number one takeaway that you could get.
We interview a lot of people from customer success. What does it take to establish a voice of the customer program? Can you tell me a little bit about your CX team? Who does this involve in order to get this kind of program out? Is it mostly for the strategic accounts, those interviews with customer executives, as you're going to share with us?
Yeah, so this is a program that we run with high-touch accounts and a subset of these high-touch accounts that have strategic importance required to invest additional resources from a central organization. That is the one we report into from this VOC, Voice of the Customer Center of Excellence perspective. So we work with more than 100 customer success managers around the world. They have responsibility over their own accounts at their local level. And what we do from a central level is partnering with them to accelerate and identify opportunities where we elevate the voice, raise the voice of their own customers at central level and work together to make things happen, to change with a customer focused mindset.
Amazing. So we're going to break down what you at HPE call the executive interview program, correct?
Correct.
When did you start the program and kind of like why?
So the program as such was incubated in the services organization like 4 years ago. But then when we saw how powerful this could be, we wanted to expand it to as a service kind of business unit and partner with the CSMs to also reinforce this trusted advisor role with all the insights that it will bring. And also putting a special focus not only in improving, but again in identifying business for opportunities to grow the business. Because during these executive conversations, it's very easy to identify what is that we can either upsell, cross-sell, or minimize the risk of churn. Basically, the program is structured around three main pillars. The first one is identifying these business outcomes expectations. The idea is to use a standardized framework that we adopted from the TSIA in understanding how good of a job are we doing in delivering on these business outcomes that are expected. The second one is making sure that we understand the experience throughout the life cycle, but with very strong focus in emotions. And I know this is a concept that in business is sometimes tricky, but even more now with all this AI explosion going from generative to agentic to human AI, we think it's extremely important to recognize that we are human, and as such, we make decisions with the heart, and then we justify what we have decided with the rational, with the head. But this was bringing a new way to look at the customer journey with these emotions and the emotions drivers in the middle of the assessment process. And then once we have assessed what is expected from an outcomes perspective and what is the experience that we are delivering, this is, of course, at the core of the interview. The third pillar is making sure we do something with that. Because as we always said, it's better not to ask if we're not going to act. Will never be worse than spending 1 hour talking to a high influential customer persona in a top account or in whatever account, talking to the customer and not doing anything with that and not showing back to the customer what is that you're doing. So what we put together is what we call a closed loop action that basically has 3 dimensions. One is for, of course, the customer, when we show for each one of the opportunities that have been identified who is going to be doing what in taking action. We formalize this with the help of the customer success manager who orchestrates this closed loop plan, and we come back to the customer. So like a return on investment on the time they have invested with us. But also we take the opportunity in this closed loop to recognize the customer success managers or the accounting members, basically considering the feedback that proactively the customer has shared with us. So as part of this closed loop, we have the improvement actions that come back to the customer. We have the recognition to the customer success managers and whomever in the accounting the customer has called out during the interview as doing a specifically good job. We take this opportunity to recognize from a central organization, from a non-biased organization, the good job that the account team and the CSMs are doing. And of course, this is what I always said is the dream of any customer experience management professional. We take the opportunity to convert all these conversations in actual business growth opportunities. As you might have heard so many times, it's not so easy to demonstrate a positive correlation in a quantitative manner between all these continuous improvement efforts and how these impact directly the business bottom line. Here is very, very easy because again, during the conversations, it's easy to identify where can we do upsell, cross-sell, how can we mitigate contract churn, and this translates clearly in quantifiable impact on the business bottom line, which is, of course, very much appreciated by executives and by the company and by the customers themselves, because we are going to grow in whatever line they are expecting for us to help them grow.
You mentioned that you're serving 100 accounts, or your top accounts. You mentioned it's an interview as opposed to a survey, obviously. So who's conducting the interview?
So the interview is conducted by internal interviewers that are trained by us. They need to be non-biased or bringing a non-biased approach to the table, and they need to have quite of a very, at least high-level business acumen, because of course, during this conversation, this is going to be required. So members are basically coming from the CSM community itself, where we train CSMs to interview accounts that they do not manage directly. And of course, we also have members from the VOC organization that we, like me, interviewing some of the customers. But the beauty of involving the CSMs in this interviewing role is also that they learn from accounts that they don't manage directly. So it's a great opportunity to share what's going on and to leverage from whatever they're putting in place in their own accounts, in maybe suggesting to their other colleagues in the CSM community, how could they just go in the same direction.
Is it okay if you shared like a couple of questions that you love asking executives?
It's what we call a semi-structured interview, meaning that the dialogue is not predefined, because we want to adapt the conversation and the dialogue to whatever is important to the customer. So we basically use guided framework that starts with 30 minutes, focusing on the what we call business outcomes. And in the business outcomes framework, and it's kind of playful, we use a very colorful kind of template that allow the customer to just relax first and then also think while they're talking about what is important. So where we will have 4 main areas that we will ask the customer to choose from to go into the conversation in more detail. These 4 areas has to do with how we, as a technology company, can we help our customers to, number one, maximize their operational performance? This means basically stability, so having no disruptions, uptime as expected, compliance to all these vertical new regulations. Again, coming back to the AI, many things are transforming manufacturing 0.0, the new healthcare, a lot of things we need to be in compliance with. The second topic is how do we help our customers in optimizing their own cost, in buying either what we call CapEx or OpEx, or helping them to maximize the productivity of their own staff or prevent from the attrition to occur. The third one is how do we help our customers to grow their own revenue by either acquiring new customers, maintaining the ones that they already have, or expanding those. And the fourth one, which was added last year and has a lot of traction, a lot of focus, is having to do with sustainability. How do we help our customers to decrease their carbon emissions or their energy consumption? And also, how do we help them to just support any kind of circular economy, refurbishing, recycling initiatives? With these four areas in mind and the different subcategories that I have briefly explained, what we ask the customer in this first 30 minutes of the conversation is, we have stars like on top of we share one slide with all these areas, and we ask the customer to just choose between 3 to 5 areas of these subcategories where they would like for us to focus the conversation in, and we proceed.
You give them 4 value categories and you say, okay, which one do you want to talk about?
Exactly. This is the first slide that the customers see. We explain them these 4 concepts and the subcategories below. They tell us where they want to place their own stars, which are the 3 or 5 topics we want to discuss. Once they have selected wherever the topics are, the second slide is just taking those and asking them to rate us with a scale that goes from 0 to 10 on what is the score, to your point, because it's important that they focus in the score and then they provide the why. Otherwise, it gets messy. So they will tell us, okay, for if they have selected operational, they will tell us, okay, operational is very important for me, and I give you a 3 out of 10. And these are the reasons why. And then the third and last slide that they see is basically this one. Here we'll have the scale 0 to 10, and they will have to rate each of these phases from 0 to 10. What is the experience of working with us in the discover and consider phase, the purchasing phase, the onboarding phase, and the reasons why.
So initially, you said at the beginning of the call, I give them sort of like a buffet of ideas of value, that how we can impact their organization, and they need to choose 3 or 5. And then you said something, they also gave us feedback about the customer journey and moments of
Yes.
truth. Is that after you ask them about and have that conversation about those 3 or 5 areas? How do you do that? Do you show them the customer journey and ask them to choose moments of truth that they want to talk about? Can you share, like, what is the transition like and how do you spark that conversation?
We explain also this to the customer when we initiate the conversation. We said basically the interview has 2 main parts, and we're going to only share 2 slides to illustrate the conversation. The first slide is the business outcome one, where they will choose what is important and how good of a job are we doing in delivering on those categories that they choose from. The second slide is the customer journey with 6 different life cycle phases that we have adopted from what we call infinite loop. What we did was aggregating results to understand what were the emotions in each of the phases of the journey and which were the moments of truth, just to prioritize what is that we want to improve and why. When we put together this journey with the consolidated insights from all the surveys, this is what we were able to learn, and was basically that at the 2 customer persona levels that we normally interview, which are the CIO and the operations managers, basically there were very different emotions when you were considering the upstream process or the downstream process. So the orange means the emotions were kind of concern or hesitation, lack of confidence, while green was positive emotions. From here, what we determine, because the moment of truth having to do with expanding and renewing, of course, is the moment of truth of every other moment of truth. If they decide not to expand with us, then we have an issue. So focusing on the emotions here in this last part of the journey, we were able to basically, the issue was that the emotions in this phase were basically the customer were worried and were disillusioned of using our solution like 2 years ago. And then we said, why? And this is why I insist so much in understanding what is behind this emotion. What are the emotion drivers? So in this case, they were worried because they didn't thought that they were going to be able to achieve the business outcomes that they were expecting to achieve with our solution, and they were not maximizing the utilization of what they were buying. And then with that is where we said, okay, let's understand why they're not meeting this business outcome, why they think they might not be able to meet all the business outcomes that they would expect out of working with us. So we identify the improvement themes, we prioritize them, and we took action. These 3 slides. The first one is the framework for them to choose. The second is the framework for them to score us in these business outcomes that they have selected and provide insights on how can we improve. And the third one is the customer journey with 6 phases where we will ask them, using the same scale that goes from 0 to 10, 10 being best, how would you rate the experience in each of those phases that you get working with us? So we basically get quantitative results and qualitative insights for business outcomes in one side, for life cycle experience in the other one.
You're killing it on CX. And then from a customer outcome standpoint, the perception is higher because now you gave them a buffet of potential value that you can bring, that maybe some of them, when they see the slide, was like, can you do this? And they might be curious and start asking you about it, even if they didn't come to the conversation thinking you could do it.
This is the connection with business growth, because you name it. When they are thinking and they're thinking, I'm going to place the star, the fact that they need to tell me, where do I put the star? It's like a playful that allow them the time to think. And while they're thinking, they uncover opportunities that might not necessarily be discussed previously, because the day-to-day, the issues that need to be solved are sometimes too much as to focus on this more strategic value-based realization that they're thinking through in this conversation. And of course, we come back to the account team and say, hey, these are the areas of interest that need to be developed with the help of the customer success manager.
Do most of them agree for you to record the call?
Yes, 99% of the times they do. Because, of course, our commitment is recordings are only to be used for internal purposes, only to be shared with the people that is going to be working on improving based on your inputs. There is no any other purpose behind.
Let's say you did the interview. What do you typically do at the end of the call, and what do you do after the call, and how fast do you do it?
Well, at the end of the call, after we understand these business outcome expectations and the emotions through the life cycle, I normally said, well, now if you will close your eyes, this is how we normally close the interview, thanking them for the time invested with us. And we say, and normally in the interview is the one leading the interview. Then we have what we call customer insights architect, meaning the one that is going to have to summarize all these insights in actionable document. And sometimes an observer, just to train these people in, again, the future role of leading interviews. So we normally say at the end, thank you for all these lovely inputs. And because customers are very clear and very candid and very honest in their feedback. And we said, if you now will close your eyes, will think about what does it mean to work with us in HPE based on all this insight that you have provided, what the rating will be and why. And then we also said, if you feel comfortable, only if that is the case and without going into branding names or brand names, how that experience will be if you will think about working with our competitors. And this gives us a lot of information about what is that we want to keep doing and what is that maybe we need to rethink. And if time permits, it depends. We also ask closing question, which is, if instead of being here today with, let's say, Susana and whomever is with me in the interview, you will be here today with our CEO, Antonio Neri, what would you say, Antonio, should be the main opportunity for improvement that we have as a company?
Wow.
This question especially help us to prioritize a sense of urgency to improve or to grow in that. And then, of course, we commit, as we explain the customer, thank you for being here with us for 1 hour. Next steps is we will come back to your CSM and to your accounting. We will develop a formal action plan that you should be receiving. Well, first of all, the notes are validated by the customer. So we don't distribute the notes until they validate, because they're very sensitive, of course, in making sure that the feedback is properly captured. So in a matter of days, they will receive the notes, validate the notes, and then we come back to the account team, has a post-interview meeting and put together the action plan with the CSM role orchestrating that, because they know who is who in the account team. And then we come back to the customer with this action plan.
Do you do something to make them want to meet with you? Is there any incentive, or do most of them are like, yeah, that totally makes sense. I totally get it. Let's meet.
No, there is no any incentive. The incentive is the customer success manager explaining them what is the benefit of being part of this program, why their voice is going to be elevated more to a corporate level than never before, and well, talking to them about these closed loop actions that they will receive in turn. So it's basically the customer success manager doing the buy-in on making them feel how important they are just because of the fact of being selected to participate in this program.
Yeah, it's almost like an honor to be part of this program. Not everybody gets selected, certainly not every year. And then the closed loop. So the first step is obviously thank you email. I'll send a summary. And then after a few days, you send the summary with your understanding of what they said. They confirm it. Then you start sharing it. I assume it's a Word file. Who gets that file? And how do you make sure somebody takes action? How do you hold your own internal team accountable on closing the loop?
Once the action plan has been put together, again, with the orchestration of the CSM, there is not only the CSM that needs to take action. In this plan, there are clear owners by each of the different actions identified that might be the CSM or not. So it could be someone in operations, someone in the account team, someone in sales, someone's in delivery. But also when we see patterns across, this is at account level. So per year, normally we have around 250 actions at account level that are identified and put in place. But also when we see patterns across accounts, across geos, this is embedded in a quarterly report that gets up to all the executives in the company on what is that we need to improve. It's two-dimensional kind of improvement strategy. Plus, when we do these customer journeys that has the strategic customer journeys with a 3 years horizon, these inputs are also being made part of the customer journey to be versus what it is now. And the follow-up goes in the hands of the CSMs. As I said, very much related with the customer success plans. So we put together the action plan, the commitment communicated back to the customer, but then it's the customer success manager follow-up that counts to close the loop in a constant manner.
Well, I gotta ask you because you've been an executive for many years, and when you launch a new program, you want it to be successful. You want to demonstrate success. And usually, when we demonstrate success, if we're really seasoned, exceptional executives, we're going to show success on the qualitative side. Quotes from clients show that there's a difference in engagement, potentially even CSAT, which brings me to the quantitative to say, hey, my program is actually making a difference. What kind of KPIs do you track? Do you use any technology, any systems to literally show that there's a correlation between the time that you had that discussion to the time that something changed in, like, out of 100 accounts where you had an interview, we see a difference, we see a trend?
We have like qualitative feedback and quantitative feedback to just measure the temperature of the program. It's like 360 feedback. The feedback coming from the CSM, I always say that we interview our final customers, but my internal customers are the CSMs and the account teams. If they don't find value in the program, I'm dead. So the feedback of the account team on what that it mean for them, what is the value that it brings to the day, because you could think, okay, I'm talking to my customer every day, why is this different? So them acknowledging the value of this non-biased conversation, this corporate team putting resources or reinforcing their efforts, this is qualitative feedback that we track. Of course, the customer feedback, do they feel the conversation has gone, what type of value they see in the conversation and the action plan that comes together afterwards, but also the industry and the academia. We've been asked to, like today, have the honor to be part of many different forums at both the industry and the academia with thought leadership, because this connection with business growth is not something that is usually in place for, again, customer experience programs, which normally focus more on continuous improvement. But how do you translate that into actual impact on the bottom line? This is not so common. And it's very useful for us in the world. It's, as I said, it's our dream. I mean, I was in the past involved working in many other different programs, survey programs with more than 40,000 surveys being launched every month and whatever. But in the end, you have to go into very complex mathematical regression analysis, mathematical hypotheses, wait for 2 years to be able to prove if the overall satisfaction increase. This is all, in my eyes, really a waste of time. It's like an academic exercise. It's not practical. And here is very practical. You talk, you identify, you put things in place to the point that with the help of the CSMs, what we do is we quantify these opportunities that are to come in the funnel with these insights. And I can tell you basically this means that we're contributing to support business growth in 30% of the billing value. This is the way we track it. And of course, this is all reported in Power BI format, so everyone can access to their own account, their own impact from a billing value perspective of their own improvement plans, and also share points with very restricted access because all this information is confidential. So you can only access to the information on your own account. But yeah, you have everything there, the pre-interview meeting, the post-interview meeting, the action plan, the interview records. We also put together like an initial market analysis before going into the interview with the help of the CSM to make sure that we are all acquainted on, okay, what is the situation with this customer, with the solution they bought from us. So there is a lot of records before and after the interview to set the scene and to connect all this effort with what it means for the customer, for the company, and for the industry in general.
I'm listening to you today, to this conversation, and I'm saying, I want to set up a program like that, executive interview program, and have executives in key accounts being interviewed with a non-biased party. But I'm a startup. I'm not HPE. I don't have thousands of employees and a big machine behind me. What are the 3 key elements to make such interviews successful? I'll tell you what my takeaways are, and then you can add or detract any of those.
Sure.
1, don't have your CSM do the interview. Maybe have somebody in marketing do it or somebody in sales do it, but don't have the person actually intimate with that account do it. Secondly, make sure that you ask the right questions. And when you ask about outcomes and when you ask about the journey, give them a buffet to choose from so that the conversation is efficient, but you also have control over it and you can frame it to specificity. And then before you ask open-ended question, ask for the number. It gives the person a chance to give you sort of from a numeric standpoint, immediate point of view to what to focus on, where are the biggest gaps so they can focus on the right priorities. Otherwise, you don't have a holistic information. And lastly, do share the information with the CSM and internal teams so that we can have an immediate short impact with the CSM taking it to an actionable plan, but also a strategic long-term impact by sharing it with the ELT. Did I miss anything? Was there like
Oh my
something like,
God, it's an
yeah?
excellent summary. You got it all. By the way, being a small and medium or a startup, I mean, you don't need a big machine. It's just no. In fact, we work with 100 CSMs around the world, but we target no more than 70 accounts, 50 accounts. You can target 10. We started with 5. The thing is just capture the value in the way you have described it, make it objective, non-biased, and for sure the CSM cannot interview their own account. And then maybe making sure that you have sponsorship and no matter the size of the company, you always need a sponsorship because there is always the beginning, okay, what is in here for me, why is different. So just having executive sponsorship that this is going to work, the reason why, and this is part of our mission, that will help to mitigate the initial resistance to change. And then also making sure that you design this with the CSMs involved. This needs to be something that they find to be useful. So you need to adapt that to the reality of your company with the input.
Yeah, I would say, first of all, like make sure that the CSMs feel like the questions you're going to ask are valuable for them. And even before you interview, like identify the executive, the CSM can provide an input. And if you have some general point, you can ask them, what should I be asking them about? Like if they don't bring up something, what is it that I should listen for? And so they can give you a little bit biased information before you do your unbiased interview.
Yeah. This is part of what we do in what we call pre-interview meeting. So you can have an script, but of course you need to know what is the reality of the account. What are the pain points? What are that they have in mind for the medium term? So you can put things in context when you receive the feedback. You cannot influence the feedback, but it's much easier to understand what the customer is coming from if you have this, let's say, pre-mindset already acquired from the CSM and the account team. In the pre-interview meeting is normally the CSM participating and orchestrating that, but not only the CSM, is the account executive, is the what we call the delivery board organization involved, the pre-sales, the channel, anyone that has any meaningful information to be shared. So you are good to go when you are confronting the customer, because it's a very important conversation to have and you need to be well prepared.
What's the tech stack? Sounds like it's very simple. You need Office 365 to document. No, yeah. What do you need?
We
Yeah.
use Teams. We use very straightforward PowerPoint with 3 slides, very colorful, something that doesn't sound like boring or something that is going to introduce the conversation as a relaxed one. So yeah, 3 PowerPoint slides, Teams meeting, and then we just use Excel with the action plan together. Of course, then all this goes back to Power BI to consolidate results. But I mean, this is just the second phase, just to, when you scale it up to a different level, just to start with Teams, PowerPoint, and one Excel file. Very, very easy, and a very positive attitude with everybody involved.
And with that, that means that anybody that's still listening here, you're serious about introducing executive interview program in your organization. What opens up is absolutely amazing. And there's no excuse because the tech stack, you already own it. So, and we already gave you the playbook. So if you do choose to do it, you choose to pick up this mission, type in the comments below and then hit me up on LinkedIn to let me know if you actually did it, what came out of it. Oh, I'd love to invite you back on this YouTube channel and interview with you to see what opened up for you. What take did you take on it? This is Dana. Thank you so much for coming. You're absolutely delightful.
Thank you. Likewise, Irit. Yeah, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. You have me anytime for
Yeah.
anything you need.
And with that, my friends, this is a wrap. Yet another episode of this podcast. I really appreciate you listening. And if you have a moment, please give this podcast a like, subscribe, tell others. And as usual, I'll see you at the next podcast. Big love from me.